Welcome to Net Day. This is number 14, I believe. My name is Mike Bedell. I'm Dean of the College of Business and Technology. NETT, of course, stands for Northeastern Empowerment Through Technology. And day is about today. So welcome to Net Day. We hope we have an intriguing program for you, something that's forward-looking and thoughtful and grabs the leading edge. And so that's really the purpose. I want to thank the various faculty that have been involved in this, in putting this together. There's a faculty committee, Dave Jordan, who you met, Tunku, who's over here, Ahmed Khalid in the back, and some others that I'm missing at this point. But again, thank those faculty for putting this together. I hope you guys have a great day, and it's thoughtful, and do not hesitate to talk to these folks. Ask questions during, ask questions after. That's how you're going to learn. So thanks for being here. Have a great day.
So we're going to be talking about case studies of artificial intelligence and cybersecurity, a hugely relevant topic in today's environment. So without any further ado, here's Bonnie to give us that presentation. Take it away, Bonnie.
Hello, everybody. Thank you for joining today, and I'm excited to be here virtually. That's the way so much of business is conducted these days. So I'm delighted to be speaking with you today. So I'm going to talk about case studies in AI and cybersecurity. This is a presentation that I made at the Informs conference on October 18th. Your professor hosted the session of the conference. I was delighted to be invited and accepted. And so I'm presenting essentially what I had done on that day. Right now, we're talking about something that's called an AI summer. An AI summer is when there's some new technologies that are coming around and people are excited about artificial intelligence. They think that there's investment opportunities there. There's a lot of buzz in the news about it, but like any curve, there's also overinflated expectations. AI summers have come about many times throughout the course of AI's history. You probably know that the term artificial intelligence was coined at a 1956 Dartmouth conference that said, computers have reached the point where if we can just write the rules to human thought, we should be able to build a computer that can think like a human being. And that's where the term artificial intelligence was coined. So there was an AI summer in the late 50s and early 60s, but those hopes were dashed rather quickly because things that are easy for humans, like understanding spoken language or understanding vision, turned out to be much more difficult than things that are hard for humans to do. So for instance, pretty early on, people were able to write programs that were able to solve the entry-level calculus test at MIT. But calculus is something that you learn as a sentient being, as a advanced teenager. And so understanding the rules of how to do it, those are pretty clearly laid out, and it's easy to write a program to do that. But what people were completely surprised by was how hard it was to do things that a toddler could do easily. So the first AI winter, which follows an AI summer, that is funding dries up, interest dries up, was in the middle 1960s. Another AI summer came along in the late 1980s when people thought, well, let's build expert systems. And people built a bunch of systems that did some things really, really well, but they also turned out to be brittle and hard to maintain. So the latest AI summer has been engendered by a lot of the work that has come out of big data and massively parallel processing and things like that. So it's an exciting time, and you hear about AI in the news all the time. It also has global appeal all around the world. North America, Europe, the Middle East and Africa, Asia. There's incredible investment in artificial intelligence right now. So it's an important topic. Here's the abstract of the paper. I'm going to talk you through a couple of examples where it has been done. We will see some examples as we go forward. My outline is to grab your attention. I hope I have done that. I hope I have let you know this is a really important topic and incredibly timely. I will give you some context. I will talk about what recommendations are coming out of industry and academia. I will talk about some applications, including risks and challenges. give you some detailed examples and use cases, and then my contact information will be at the end. I too am happy to connect with you over LinkedIn or other places. There's lots of hype right now, but people don't really know what's real. The hype is things like this headline that said, "Surrender your desk job to the AI productivity miracle," says Goldman Sachs. The reality, a paper that came out of the National Bureau of Economic Research in March, found that on a call center agent, you could improve, on average, a call center agent's performance by about 15% by giving them an AI assistant to do their job. Now, of course, it's not uniform across the board. Call center agents who had already been performing at the top of their game were among the best in class at what they did. It didn't help them very much. But people who were just learning how to do the job, people who weren't very good at it, augmented AI assistants helped them significantly. So across the board, it was approximately 15%. And you can see the reference there, so you can look that up on your own. But this is something that everyone has been talking about and has been doing so for quite a while. There was an article published in February of this year where one of the reporters from the New York Times had a long chat with a GPT chatbot. And by the end of the conversation, the chatbot was saying to him, "You're married, but you don't love your spouse. You're married, but you love me." Well, that's pretty disturbing, right? That a chatbot could be having that conversation with somebody, and it got a lot of press. Generative AI, which is the general category, GPT, generative pre-trained transforms, are an example of generative AI. So what we see from this is that there's some Gen AI headlines that are likely and some that are unlikely. There's some that are benefits, there's some that are risk, but there's just a lot of talk these days about generative AI. So I during any AI summer, you have to read news with caution. You have to have a healthy professional skepticism when you read things, and you need to do a little bit of research in the background to figure out what's real and what isn't. It has been an ongoing topic of discussion for decades. Here's a study from 10 years ago that the Oxford Martin School did on which jobs are most likely to be automated and which are more likely to be automated. And you can see that this is something that people have been thinking about for a while. At the time that that study came out, places like The Guardian and The Telegraph were saying, new study shows nearly half of US jobs are at risk of computerization. So it is something that people talk about. I typically don't talk about AI replacing people. I talk about AI augmenting people. I talk about the fact that I think AI is going to be most useful as an intellectual power tool that helps people do their jobs better. It helps people to stay within boundaries. It provides inputs to them. It can help be a critique of what they're doing, and it can also be a resource for looking up information. But in my opinion, at least right now, AI still requires adult supervision. What it will do is elevate the level of intellectual work that are in many jobs and allow people to be much more productive than a human that is not augmented. We talked a little bit about the hype cycle. If you are unaware of it, Gartner publishes a hype cycle every single year, talking about where various technologies have progressed. And as you can see along the bottom, there's usually some trigger that triggers it. Then there's a peak of expectations, then there's a trough of disillusionment, and then there's going to be, we're starting to climb up the curve to where it's actually being effective and get to a place where it is really productive. Generative AI is at the peak of inflated expectations right now, and it's headed for the trough of disillusionment. So it's important to be able to understand what's real and what isn't. Generative AI can hold conversations. What it really does at its core is predict what comes next. It can predict a word in a sentence. It can predict a response to a question. It can predict pictures. It can synthesize large data sets. It can coach novices. It can translate natural language. It can do a number of different things. It can generate computer code. It can generate test code If you give it an algorithm, you can say, generate test code for this. It can do a bunch of things that it extrapolates the details of things that need to be done. But that bullet point down at the bottom is the point that I come back to. It requires adult supervision. Generative AI, which is a lot of the hype these days, is also just one area of artificial intelligence. It lives in a world where, from computer vision to planning and scheduling to speech to predictive analytics, there's a number of different areas. I wasn't able to get all of them on here, but generative AI is just one slice of it. So it's also important to keep that in mind. Up until probably 2 years ago, when generative AI started hitting the news, it was really a backwater in research that people hadn't done much with. But then some people came out with some algorithms that showed its effectiveness in a number of areas, and all of a sudden it blossoms. And that's sort of the way the research field goes. Also, within generative AI, it's getting applied to a number of different things: text to image, text to video, text to code, text to 3D, text to audio, text to text. So ChatGPT is just one little thread in this. And so you shouldn't think that GPT is all of generative AI, and you shouldn't think that it's even all of artificial intelligence. There are many, many different threads within the research and within the area. It's not all good news, of course. There are challenges and pitfalls. So developing a reliable generative AI model comes with some real world challenges and some current concerns, but they are also opportunities. So you will see companies that will be capitalizing on this and doing some exciting things with it. When you look at some of the risks and challenges, there's the quantity of the computational data. Large language models, ChatGPT is trained on 570 gigabytes of data. Training it takes days, sometimes weeks. So building a generative AI is not a trivial thing. What people are starting to do is to have language models that are almost fully trained and then fine-tuning them for the area that they're working on. So it might be a large language model about holding conversations with a human being, but then they train it on insurance or medical practice or something like that. So that's one way people are starting to deal with the risk of taking a long time to build. There's also data security and privacy. You could be exposing proprietary or personally identifiable data. That's a concern, and you want to be very cautious about that. And training ChatGPT on just the internet could put you at risk for this. There's also hallucinations. One of the strengths of GPT is that it's able to come up with novel ideas. So you could use it for things like generate 3 different storylines for a mystery novel that includes A, B, and C or something like that. And it can come up with some new ideas for you. But in certain settings, for instance, if you're analyzing somebody's finances, or if you're making a loan, or if you are making a medical diagnosis, you don't want it to make new things up. You want it to work very carefully within the field of established research or established law around making loans. You don't want it to be creative. So you have to be careful about that. And of course, bias is always something that we need to be very cautious of at all the times, because not all data sets are created equally. The participants, people on the internet, is not necessarily statistically balanced to represent a population as a whole. For instance, I was at a presentation last week where one of the leaders at the Mayo Clinic in Rochester, Minnesota, is implementing a system to assist doctors in their diagnosis, but they're very well aware that being based in Rochester, Minnesota, means that they know an awful lot about the health histories of people with Scandinavian heritage, but doesn't necessarily have a huge data set of people who have Indian heritage or other parts of Europe heritage. So they are actively working with health organizations around the world. One was an early link that they made was with a healthcare organization in Israel to get people who had, that kind of a background into their system so that they could have a balanced and a statistically appropriate view of their data set. So this is something people are grappling with every day. So what are some of the research needs? The European Union Agency for Cybersecurity points out at least these 5 need to be done. We need to have test beds where people can test and optimize their machine learning-based tools. We need to have incentives for developers who are doing penetration testing tools based on AI to find explicit security vulnerabilities and assess attacker behaviors. We need to have standardized frameworks to assess the preservation and privacy of the confidentiality of the information. We need to have training for AI practitioners using real world scenarios. Many AI, data science, and machine learning models are set up with data sets that are beautifully tailored to give you the perfect outcome. And you feel like, oh, this is so easy. And I'm on the advisory board of several graduate programs in data science, machine learning, and business analytics. And the number one complaint students bring back to us is, I was trained on these beautiful examples, and the real world is so messy. I had no preparation for how messy the real world is. So it's something that people are working on. And then also the European Union Agency for Cybersecurity would like an observatory of AI and cybersecurity threats, so it can share it with its members. Recommendations that are coming out of industry: developing AI frameworks, libraries of design patterns, prompt engineering discipline, really applying the rules, regulations, best practices of software engineering to things like prompt engineering, to design pattern correlation, things like that. Also, you need to do pre-deployment risk assessments. You need to have dangerous capability evaluations, third-party model audits, safety restrictions on model usage, red teaming. This is where you are ready to launch a system and you hire a group of people to test out your software, to try and break it, to try and find vulnerabilities in it. Operations, you need to have extensive comprehensive governance. You have to monitor, align, and elevate post-deployment so that you can learn from challenges you face. You need to prepare, anticipate that there will be problems. So you have to have training and emergency response plans in place before you launch any kind of an AI or machine learning system to be operational in the real world. This is out of a paper from just the beginning of this month. So I think that that's a really good culmination of things that are useful. There's several sources there. So let's look at some examples. One example is Baptist Health South Florida. They're using machine learning solutions to help improve consumer and patient experience, make their operations more efficient, as well as to assist provider in caring for patients. I talked about Mayo just a few minutes ago. S&P has their global market intelligence tool where they want to mine unstructured data. The person who spoke from the Mayo Clinic is both a master's level computer scientist at MIT and an MD, physician. And he said that his estimate is 85% of the important information in anybody's health record is unstructured data. It's in the notes of the provider. It's in the documentation of the meetings with the client. So unstructured data is a huge area, and S&P is marketing it, and Mayo is looking at ways that they can mine it as well. They want to reduce the human in the loop effort, and they want to automate tests and verify the quality. IBM says machine learning is the ultimate accelerator for the enterprise. They want to build systems that do mundane tasks, that save time and augment productivity. And you're seeing a lot coming out in terms of a new version of Watson that they're selling around their generative AI approach, which I don't know a lot about, but I'm going to find out more. It's motivated me to learn more about it. And Bloomberg, they respond to over 300 billion requests a day for data. So they want to model non-traditional ML problems and use a graphical approach to the way that they're dealing with this. I think the graph databases are a very hot area that is going to become very important in the next couple of years. And I put a link to an article that I wrote earlier this year at the bottom of this page. It's the Infosys Consulting Insights Journal, and my article starts on page 7. Here are some challenges and some applications for AI and security. And from this, I am quoting some work from Infosys, which is a company I worked for until recently, but they have approved me sharing some of the things that they're doing to give you a flavor for this. And I'm being mindful of the time here because I have a hard stop, I'm afraid, at the bottom of the hour. So I'm going to be careful in terms of that. I'll kind of zip through these, but you can reach out to me if you have other questions, and I can put you in touch with people that did the work if you have specific questions. The need for cybersecurity risk management is huge. There have been a surge of 238% in cyber attacks against banks, as based on a report since the COVID pandemic. So it's just a huge area. AL and machine learning usage in cybersecurity risk management, there are a number of different use cases. You can use it to identify names generated by domain-generated algorithms. You can use it to prevent zero-day attacks. You can use it to develop AI-based antivirus software. You can use it for network intrusion detection and prevention. And you can see that there's a number of different benefits, whether it's holistic cybersecurity risk management, improved signal to noise ratio, reduced operational financial risks, and the general thinking is that a holistic approach builds an integrated security immune system around it. What does this mean? Let's take a look at a couple examples. So use case one, cyber risk quantification and residual risk calculation. So residual risk, next slide, please. There we go. Is when you've implemented all of the security concerns that are standard practice. You've implemented strong passwords. You've implemented required password changes. You've implemented other kinds of security measures. There's still going to be risk that's left over after all that. You're still vulnerable to attack because attacks are changing all the time. Attackers are changing their methods, coming up with new ones, applying new technologies to them. And so that residual risk calculation, it's important to figure out what that will be. And you want to have it be in a continuous process where you provide an action, you set it up, you assess it, you score it, and then you determine what your next actions will be, and you keep going in this continuous loop. There are a number of different people who care passionately about it. Obviously, any firm that's doing business on the internet needs to be conscious of this, but also in merger and acquisition kinds of environments. There you're bringing together all of the risks from one company and putting it together with the risks of another company, and you need to make sure that you don't create holes in your system by doing that. Also, there are companies that provide cyber insurance. So they also are trying to underwrite the processes and manage the aggregate portfolio of the risk. So all of these organizations care passionately about it. Let's go to the next slide just to see how this would be implemented. So here it is across an illustrative functional architecture. You take your cyber risk data sources on the left, watch as they come through the data warehouse, look at your AI and ML-based probabilistic security modeling for all of the risks that could be present there, create the output of the cyber risk quantification, and then create a reporting dashboard for leadership. Let's go to the second example now. Automation of cybersecurity controls. Here's where you're trying to automate the inspection, scanning, and analysis. You're looking at threat intelligence triggering and automated breach notification. On the next slide, you'll see what that workflow looks like. An illustrated workflow would be to have the tool where you have the cybersecurity tool set up, bring it through to your AI-based controls, whether it's robotic process automation, machine learning, natural language processing, any of a number of different AI-based controls in your system. Take it through to cybersecurity control segments supported through AI, and then automated controls management and controls and vulnerability reporting. So it's really a workflow from left to right of showing how this could be implemented. And as I say, this is work that I was affiliated with when I was at Infosys. Use case review through document digitization. Many companies have huge caches of old paper documents or scans of documents. And as we've said, sometimes 80 to 85% of the important information you need is in this unstructured document. So you need to put that through some kind of a process flow and also deal with the risks for using AI approaches. Here's a high-level workflow. You would take the document scan, you would do the image conversion and processing, do vision-based structure analysis, AI-powered OCR engine, post-processing, and then the content extraction and upload. So this is a pretty, plain vanilla kind of a system, but at every point in this way where you're using AI, you need to account for the risks and the challenges associated with it. Here's an illustrated workflow looking at how that would be implemented, like we've seen the workflows before. And then finally, who am I? Why have I been talking to you now for almost half an hour? My background is I have a PhD in artificial intelligence, and I've spent my career correlating disparate sets of big data for actionable results. I have been a researcher and an academic at a number of different institutions. I was a tenured professor in the graduate programs in software at the University of St. Thomas in St. Paul, Minnesota. I've been an entrepreneur. I've founded a number of different companies. I've worked at big companies in recent years. Most recently Infosys, but before that NTT Data, Teradata, Cognizant, Honeywell, PwC, Korn Ferry. And in my career, I've created over $1 billion worth of value for the companies with which I've been affiliated. Thank you for your time and attention today. Go ahead and take a snap of the QR code. It will take you to my LinkedIn profile. I look forward to connecting with you. Reach out to me if you have any questions.